clap, everyone. Hi guys, how's it going? Everyone's really quiet. All right, here we go. So let's start off by everyone going around and saying their name and their favorite color. Who wants to start? I'm just kidding, that sounds like, oh, sorry guys. That doesn't sound fun to me. Let's not do that. We can if you want. How about afterwards you tell me your favorite colors? So my name is Haley. I am a brand strategist and designer here in Denver. I am a top teacher on Skillshare. I teach at General Assembly as well. And I just taught a class on Fiverr Learn, and I believe Fiverr is one of the sponsors for tonight, so that's really awesome. I run Romeo, which is a brand studio here in Denver specializing in restaurant brand design. It's only about almost a year old, so it's pretty new. And I run Bad Bitch Branding, which some of you may have heard of. I'm actually killing off Bad Bitch Branding. It's going away very soon. I started Bad Bitch Branding 3 years ago, and that was when I was at my corporate job. So it was kind of something that set my soul on fire, and I was really excited to be doing something called Bad Bitch Branding, to be branding something called Bad Bitch Branding. Everyone told me it was crazy. It was kind of crazy. But I'm throwing it away and saying goodbye. So if you want to buy my URL, it's $1 million. So I will be branded as Haley Jordan by the end of September. So that's where you'll find me online then. So I didn't always work with brands, creating beautiful stories and digging deep into what my clients' heart's desires were. I started at CBS doing news graphics, and I did it for 5.5 years. I started to slowly hate my life, and I always say I wanted to jump off the top of the building. It's funny when you know that the CBS is located in Denver, not New York. Sometimes people think it's in New York, and the top of the building is only 3 stories high, so I really wouldn't hurt myself much, so it's all right. But I decided instead of jumping off that building that I would just leave and do something I love. And I hate the news. Does anyone else hate the news here? It's like not a good thing to watch. It's sad on purpose. So today I help rebels, rule breakers, and risk takers create brands that they love. So tonight I'm only going to talk for about 35 to 40 minutes or so, and then we're going to leave the rest for questions and networking. But I wanted to cover the top 4 things that you need when you're creating a brand. I call these the brand essentials. Of course, there's more, and of course, brand strategy and design for powerful brands takes way longer than 30 to 40 minutes, and it's more than 4 steps. But as you're beginning, these 4 steps are truly what you need to focus on. 1 is that unique selling proposition. 2 is your target audience. And 3, your brand story. And then after you have that, you need to start on your visual design. So it's important first to talk about what branding is. The most common misconception people have is they think that when they have a logo, they have a brand. But we know branding is much, much more than just a logo design. A brand is how all of the parts of a company work together to create an image. A brand is an idea, a gut feeling, and a story that lives in your customer's mind. And a brand is a promise your customer believes in. It is also an emotional experience that your customer has when they interact with you on any level. I love branding so much because it's art and science combined. Good brand strategists do a lot of, well, they don't do neuroscience. They read a lot of neuroscience and psychology. And then, of course, you have the side of art, which is a lot of the graphic design, imagery, photo shoots, and all of that. Combine these 2 things, and you get beautiful, amazing, well thought out brands. My favorite case study of all time. Who is this? One person knows who this is. This is Marilyn Manson. Sasha Strauss said, "Marilyn Manson is not a good singer. He is not a good guitar player, and he is not a good songwriter. He has known it from the beginning, so instead of standing around and hoping people would know who he is, he decided he would create an identity for himself, and he has executed it flawlessly. He created a name, a demeanor, and created this concept of the Antichrist superstar. The man's name is Brian Warner. He loves his family and has been married in civil ceremonies and doesn't bite the heads off of chickens. So before Marilyn Manson even wrote a song, he had his persona and his brand figured out, plus his name. His name is actually Marilyn Monroe, the first part, Marilyn, and Charles Manson combined, if you didn't know that interesting fact about him. Marilyn Manson is essentially the poster boy for fear. And sometimes I think that he might regret creating a persona with so much makeup because he has to keep up this persona and this brand at all times. I know I would absolutely hate taking on that much makeup just to be consistent with my brand. I love using the example of Marilyn Manson because it's so unconventional. Usually when we think of brands like Nike, Apple, and Coca-Cola, which many of us have brand loyalty to and love. I mean, everyone usually loves Apple, that's always right. Who uses an Apple computer or an iPhone? Most of us do. Wally Olin said, if branding can, in its strange, illogical, and emotional way, encourage people to develop a close rapport with soft drinks, hamburgers, and running shoes, what will it be able to do when its power is released for genuinely significant and worthwhile activities? And the answer to this question is it can do amazing things. Has anyone heard of Thistle Farms in Nashville? Well, you're about to hear about Thistle Farms in Nashville. Thistle Farms sells natural body and home products, but that is not all Thistle Farms does. Thistle Farms supports women who have survived trafficking, prostitution, and addiction. They do this through a 2-year residential program where they provide housing, food, and health care. They give them meaningful jobs. So Thistle Farms, like I said, sells body care and home products, but next door they also have a cafe. And of course they need to make all their products in a warehouse, so they provide jobs for these women. And they also offer a lifelong sisterhood of support where they do counseling, education opportunities, and emergency financial assistance. Thistle Farms is a beautiful place, and it has been branded so well down to the colors, the logo design, the way that they tell the brand story, even down to the way that they've created a name for themselves. The name Thistle Farms comes from the misunderstood thistle, the only flower to grow on the streets and the alleys where these women of Thistle Farms have walked. Considered a weed by many, the thistle has a deep root that can shoot through concrete, survive drought. In spite of its prickly appearance, its soft purple flower and profound healing qualities make the thistle a mysterious and gorgeous flower. The thistle has become a symbol of survival and healing for our community and women survivors around the globe. I argue that if Thistle Farms wasn't branded, they would have a really hard time making an impact. There are probably thousands of other brands like Thistle Farms that haven't done all of the work to create a powerful brand strategy, and because of that, we don't know about them. It would be really hard to tell their story and to get people to spend money in their store if they weren't branded. So branding sometimes can seem a little bit evil and conniving, but it's actually an amazing thing that can be used to create good in the world. Brands can change the world, and if not a massive change throughout the whole world, it can change a small corner of it. So I would like you guys to think of how you can change the world through whatever brand you're working on, even if you're working for a company or maybe you want to start a side hustle at some point. Think about how you can change the world, even if it's just 5 people that come in contact with your brand. Am I going too fast for you guys? Okay, good. You don't have to write everything down because you can get the slides later. I have a sheet of paper you can sign up to get the slides. So everything is branded. You are actually branded, and whatever company or side hustle you might be working on is branded as it is. Branding is a lot like first impressions. So we brand and categorize people all the time by the band t-shirt they may be wearing, what they order at the bar, what kind of music they listen to, what their hobbies are, what they talk about. This is basically a way that we brand and categorize people to better understand them. We do it all the time. So even if you haven't gotten around to writing that unique selling proposition or creating your brand story, you are already branded, which could be bad news for some of us. Al Rees said, pour a bottle of Gallo, Gallo is a cheap bottle of wine, into an empty 50-year-old bottle of French Burgundy. Then carefully decant a glass in front of a friend and ask for an opinion. You taste what you expect to taste. So we know in branding that perception is reality. So however people are perceiving your brand or you is their reality of what you're doing. So why do we need branding? How many people in here have a side hustle or their own business, or they're a creative entrepreneur in some way? Cool, that's a lot. We need branding because we live in an over-communicated society. There are thousands of brands, including all of our brands, that are trying to reach people each day through advertisements, through spam emails, through logo designs up on a wall. And our defense to all of this is a simple mind. We can't take anymore. There's too much happening all around us, and there are more businesses and brands being built daily. So if we want to create powerful brands, we need to simplify to rise above the noise. Another interesting thing about branding is that if a customer cannot see a unique reason to buy one product over the other, the cheapest product will always win. Think about if you're at the store buying laundry detergent and you don't have a preferred brand, and you're looking at all of these, say there's 4, and they're all of them are $7 except for one is $6.50, and there's no difference between them, you'll probably choose the cheapest product. And I don't recommend differentiating by being cheap. So we know that coffee, shoes, and cars are commodities, but Starbucks, Nike, and Mercedes-Benz are brands, and there's a big difference between those two things. Has anyone heard the term positioning? So positioning is the place that a brand occupies in the minds of the customers and how it is distinguished from the products of the competitors. It took me about a semester of college to understand what positioning meant, because it kind of sounds like sorcery, like controlling what's in the customer's mind and distinguishing products in their mind. So if you are confused about it, that's okay. I'm still learning about positioning every day. It's a lot bigger than I thought after all these years of learning about branding. It's kind of complex, but I think by the end of this, you'll get an idea of what positioning means and how you can position yourself. So that brings us to our brand essential number 1, which is that unique selling proposition. Your USP is a one-sentence statement that you own to differentiate your brand from competitors. Now, I won't ask you what your USP is, but who thinks they have a USP in here already? A few people? It's definitely hard, and most of my clients that come to me don't have a USP, or they think that they have one and they actually don't have one. So it's really interesting. Great examples of USPs. One would be Thistle Farms offers a safe place for women survivors to heal and work. Tattly, fake tattoos by real artists. And of course, the worst donuts in town, Voodoo Donuts, the donut shop tourist attraction. You need a USP because 1, it sets you apart in your industry. And 2, it makes your big idea so clear that everyone, the manager, the customers, and the janitor can repeat it. Everyone at Thistle Farms knows what the difference is. Everyone who works with Marilyn Manson knows what his difference is. You want to think of your USP as the seed. This is how I describe it. Your USP is the most important thing you can possibly do. So if you walk away tonight and you don't remember any of this, just know that you need a unique selling proposition. When you have your unique selling proposition, that starts to define everything else, like your logo design, your social media, the tone of voice you use, the color you use, your interior design, and so on. It is where everything starts. So the unique selling proposition is very important. I have 4 strategies for creating a USP that we're going to go over today. If you want, I've provided little sheets of paper on each side of the room. You can pass them out. People can write down their name if they want these slides, so you don't have to write all of this down because I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. The first way to differentiate, to create a USP, is finding a need and fulfilling it, an existing mutual desire. And then we have 2, specializing in a category. And 3, a non-existing desire, a brand new solution. And the 4th way to differentiate is through experience. Strategy number 1, finding a need and fulfilling it, an existing mutual desire. Does everyone know what Spanx is? The girls, the boys, do the boys know? Yes, some of the boys. So this is Sarah Blakely who created Spanx. Essentially, she created an undergarment that would smooth out her body under her white dress pants. And she found out in the process of doing this that this is actually an existing mutual desire that a lot of women had. Then we have strategy number 2. So for this, I wanted to give the example of a restaurant I'm working on right now. It's actually done, but my client has decided to go search the world for a better location if he doesn't decide to be in Denver. And there's no better location than Denver, obviously. But he's gonna go and he's gonna search in Portland and probably California to see where he wants to put this spot. But for Wild Belly, we differentiated by a category. So it is a restaurant, it's altruistic, intentional, and non-traditional. So this restaurant will be giving back. There'll be some form of charity involved in this restaurant. It's intentional because it has to do with active meditation that this person, the person I have branded, gets from snowboarding, which is why it fits perfectly in Denver. And it's non-traditional. He wanted to create a sort of lodge, but I urged him to not create the typical lodge we see a lot of bars and restaurants looking like. So we decided to create a non-traditional gathering place / lodge. Another brand is, who's heard of Lush here? It's a pretty big brand as well. Another brand that specializes by category is Lush. It's cosmetics, pure and handmade, and socially responsible products. The third strategy is a non-existing desire, a brand new solution. Henry Ford, the founder of Ford, said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. This strategy, most of us aren't creating something like a car when there have just been horses, if that makes sense. Most of us are creating something that's probably in a category. But if you are creating something, this is like Elon Musk stuff. Most of us, I feel like, aren't Elon Musk, sadly. And the fourth way to differentiate is through experience. Has anyone heard of Nap York in New York? You have? Oh, it's called Nap York, N-A-P. Who likes naps in here? Who takes naps every day? Okay, yeah, be proud of it. I call myself a naptivist, like a nap activist, because I think naps are so important. But Nap York differentiates by experience. So what you can do is go into Nap York and get a 30-minute nap session in one of their pods. And they create this experience through everything that they do, through the lighting, through the paint on the walls, through the greenery, to the healthy juices they have for after your nap. So whatever USP you choose, whichever way you decide to differentiate, you must always deliver, always deliver, or your customers and clients will not be able to trust you anymore. Think about if Marilyn Manson he does sometimes not wear his makeup, but think about if he didn't wear his makeup and started talking about other things like Gilmore Girls or something like that. We wouldn't believe him anymore. We would maybe call him crazy like we'd call some celebrities. And he wouldn't have that Antichrist superstar to his name anymore. So whatever you choose, make sure that you live up to that USP. The second brand essential is target audience. Who in here knows exactly who their target audience is, down to their age and their income level, everything like that? That's good. It's super important. So when you have your target audience down, it helps with a lot of different things. One, it helps gain clarity, not just for your audience, but for you as well, because it can be kind of confusing when you don't know exactly who you're targeting, and it will really set you back in a lot of ways. When you're clear about who your target audience is, you can make your messaging, your design, your brand story, and everything to be for that person. So that is number 2, create powerful messaging. When you know the pain points of your customer and what bothers them, you can create powerful messaging to cater to them in order to sell and make a difference. And then when you know who your target audience is, you can create design that's also catered to them. I went to the Lumineers recently. Actually, it was like last summer or something. It was a while back. Does anyone like the Lumineers in here? No? Yes. So I looked around and everyone looked like me, and that's no coincidence. It makes you feel a little bit, we're not special, is what I'm saying. The luminaires have been crafted to fit people just like me, and it was very evident when I was looking around at the crowd. Has anyone heard of Jeffree Star? After doing this presentation, I was like, oh, Jeffree Star is actually kind of like Marilyn Manson in some ways. They're very theatrical, very strong brands. But I'm showing Jeffree Star to you guys to ask a question. Who do you think, by his design, that he is targeting? You don't have to answer that. But obviously, it's not the girl who's getting married next week that wants a light shade of pink on her eyes, right? He is targeting someone that wants to get down at the club with that blue eyeshadow and that eccentric grill or something like that. All of the things that Jeffree Star has done is targeting a specific audience with laser sharp focus in order to grow his brand and to become a voice in his industry. So I want to ask you guys who you want to work with. Who do you want to work with? This is a really important question. Most of my clients that are beginning are just trying to grab anyone that comes along, and they're scared to narrow down. So for Romeo, my target audience is creative, chef-owned restaurants here in Denver. And that's a really good start, but I could be more specific. So I want you guys, when you're thinking of your target audience, to get as specific as possible. Like I was saying earlier, thinking about their income level, their fears in life. We go pretty deep. Even when it's not related, it is related. So if I were to go a little bit deeper than that last slide, I would say I'm targeting chefs in Denver. They're creative. They already own 3 to 5 restaurants. They're experiential, and typically they're rated $3 signs on Yelp. And this gets me started to doing more research and learning more about this target audience on a deeper level. The most valuable thing you can do is just talk to your target audience. Invite them out for coffee just to talk if you have access to them. If you don't, look up events, Facebook groups, forums, reviews, and case studies to get to know them on a deeper level. So when you're beginning your target audience, you need to ask yourself, who needs this product or service, and what are my customers' pain points, and what pain point am I solving? Pain points are problems, real or perceived, and entrepreneurs create solutions to pain points. Brands also create solutions to pain points. All good brands solve problems, whether that be a physical problem or a conceptual problem. Has anyone heard of a target audience persona? Yeah, so a target audience persona is a fictional character created to represent the different user types that might use a site, brand, or product in a similar way. Every brand, politician, charity, city, and business needs a target audience persona, including Marilyn Manson, Jeffree Star, Beyonce, you name it. So I don't have time to go over an entire target audience persona with you guys, but I did give you a code, or I have a checkbox you can check if you want the code for my target audience shortcut. This includes the target audience persona for Wildbelly, so you can look through a real life target audience persona. It also includes a video and some worksheets on helping you build that target audience. And I am giving it 50% off tonight, so it's like $12.50 or something like that. So if you want that, make sure to give me your email, I'll give you the code. The third most important thing that you need is a brand story. Who in here feels like they have a good brand story for their brand already? It's not easy to write a brand story, and it can take a lot of time. I feel like I'm still developing my brand story for my brands in some way. The king died, and then the queen died is a plot. The king died, and the queen died of grief is a story. A brand story is an emotional narrative that opens up an opportunity for your customer to resonate with your brand. Without a compelling story, you are just another nameless company asking for someone's money. Most brands, I think, in the world are bad brands, and most of them are just asking for our money. There are, of course, the few that stand out that we know are good brands, like Apple, Coca-Cola, Nike. Those brands are great, but most people are just trying to throw something at us and get us to buy it. And because of that, they aren't memorable and we can't even name them. If I asked you to name a bad brand, you probably wouldn't be able to name it because we don't remember them at all. So it's so important to have that powerful brand story. Has anyone heard of Donald Miller? He wrote a great book called Story Brand. And I don't believe this quote's actually from Story Brand, but this is a great quote of his. He said, "If you had watched a movie about a guy who wanted a Volvo and worked for years to get it, you wouldn't cry at the end when he drove off the lot testing the windshield wipers. You wouldn't tell your friends you saw a beautiful movie or go home and put a record on to think about the story you'd seen. The truth is, you wouldn't remember that movie a week later, except you'd feel robbed and want your money back. Nobody cries at the end of a movie about a guy who wants a Volvo." Obviously. Boring. Humans are constantly creating stories to give our life meaning. We've been creating stories since we had the invention of writing them down. So that quote earlier, "The king died and the queen died" is a plot. So that's telling facts. The second part of the quote, "The king died and the queen died of grief" is a story. That's telling facts plus emotion, and that's what makes a powerful brand story. So your brand story is the reason why your company came to be. It's what you believe in, and it's a powerful and differentiating concept. I teach 3 ways to create a brand story, and of course there are more. This is just a simplified version to help people start to begin to find that story. The 3 ways I tell people to pick their brand story is through concept, manifesto, or a narrative. So Nike is probably the best brand that I've seen that has a concept. And I want to share this ad with you guys from the 90s. It's by Janet Champ and Charlotte Moore. They wrote this ad for Nike. "Yes, this is a goddess, but you are not a goddess, and you aren't ever going to be a goddess, so maybe you should get used to it. You'll never be perfect, and you're not worshipped. And does this matter? No. Goddesses are worshipped because they aren't real, and they aren't us, and they aren't allowed to complain. Goddesses are worshipped even though they are really stone and plaster, and more often than not, really dead. And yes, they will never grow old, and they will never grow up, and they will stay that way. This, however, is not the way you will stay. Because someday, since you are human, you will notice that the time has passed, and you are not who you were 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or even last week. Someday, since you are human, you will notice your body has changed, and your face has changed, and your kneecaps look more like Winston Churchill than ever before. Don't be alarmed. Because someday, since you are human, you will decide it is time to take those long walks and run down those streets and push and bend and move your body in ways that you never thought possible. And it may be harder than you think, and you will get tired and kind of cranky, and you may want to stop, but you won't. And as you move, you will learn to rejoice in your body because it is yours and no one else's. You will learn to rejoice in being imperfect because perfect is such a complete and utter bore. You will learn to rejoice in your kneecaps because they are your kneecaps and they have seen the world. And the goddesses from some high and chilly mountaintop will be jealous of you. Let them. They are stone, you are flesh. They have pedestals, you just kicked the hell out of yours. They can't move, but you can. Just do it. So Nike is always bringing this concept back up, this good versus evil, the fight in all of us to do what's right over what's not right. Or, it's not always evil, it's sometimes just that voice of being lazy, which I guess if you distill it down, it could be evil. The second way, of course, is the manifesto. Bringing back Wild Belly again, we wrote a manifesto for Wild Belly, which I really liked a lot. So a manifesto is a published declaration of the intentions, motives, or views of the issuer. So the Wild Belly manifesto goes like this. Wild Belly believes life is best lived intentionally. We know there is freedom in risk, reckless abandon, kindness, and compassion. To us, the world is a sanctuary for everyone to call home. This notion can be experienced in powder days, campfire nights, belly laughs, and those friends you love so damn much it hurts. For Wild Belly, the only way is forward, which includes sacrificing for others and standing up for what we know to be true. While some are hoping for a revival, we are living one. Come get wild with us. Do you notice that this brand manifesto mentions nothing about beer and pizza? That's on purpose. We want to invite the customer or the guest into a deeper story. We're not just talking about pizza. We're doing a lot more with this brand than serving food and beer. The third way is by narrative. Has anyone here heard of Charity Water? Charity Water is a pretty big brand. So Scott Harrison founded Charity Water. What Charity Water does is they help bring clean water to, I believe it's 1 out of 10 people that don't have access to clean drinking water. Scott Harrison's story goes like this. At 28 years old, Scott Harrison had it all. A top nightclub promoter in New York City, his life was an endless cycle of drugs, booze, models, repeat. But 10 years in, desperately unhappy and morally bankrupt, he asked himself, what would the exact opposite of my life look like? Walking away from everything, Harrison spent the next 16 months on a hospital ship in West Africa and discovered his true calling in 2006. With no money and less than no experience, Harrison founded Charity Water, which is honestly probably the best charity brand I've ever seen so far. There are some good ones. So who thinks that their brand story would be by concept? If you're just guessing right now. What about manifesto? Do you think you could write a manifesto for what you're doing? And remember, I wrote a manifesto for a place that's going to serve beer and food. So you don't have to have this amazing charity to write a manifesto. You just have to believe in something and share it in a powerful way. What about narrative? Honestly, I don't recommend this unless you have a really, really great story, because most of our narratives will probably be pretty boring. My narrative is okay. It's probably pretty boring though to most people, so I wouldn't use a narrative. For my brands, I like to use concept usually. Does anyone feel like they have a good narrative, like Scott Harrison? No, we do not. Okay. So we know that story sells, and it can sell powerful charities as well. So the fourth way, or the fourth most important thing that you need to have when you're beginning your brand, after you've done everything else that we've talked about, is design. Everyone wants to start with the design because it is the most fun, but that's not the way you should do it. You should not start first with design. Design communicates intangible ideas in a tangible way. So your design will be able to communicate your brand strategy visually and very quickly. Like I said, Thistle Farms, they have a great brand strategy that's showing through in their design and the way they tell their story, but they needed to do that work first to get to that point. This is Sarah Heinemann. She studies how fonts influence by us, can't talk. She studies how fonts influence, can someone say influence for me? Influence. It's not a hard word to say, come on. Sarah Heinemann studies how fonts influence us. She gave one group of people 2 jelly beans and had them look at soft text while they were eating the first jelly bean, and then had them look at jagged text while they were eating the second jelly bean. She found out that people that were eating the jelly bean while looking at the soft text found the jelly bean to be 17% more sweet, whereas those looking at the jagged found it to be 11% more sour. So fonts, words, logo designs can change the way we taste things. And there have been many, many studies like this, especially with wine. There's a book called Brand Seduction that I recommend to everyone. It's super interesting. There's a lot of neuroscience in it, and it's just such a powerful thing. So we know that design can change the way we perceive something and even change the way it tastes. The first things you need for your design once you've created this brand strategy is your logo design, of course, your typography, your color, and your imagery, whether that's illustration or photography that you're doing. Since we've talked about Wild Belly quite a bit tonight, I'll go through some of the design I did for them. Does anyone have questions yet? I'll open up the end for more questions, but no? Okay. So like I said, design communicates. We don't really need this slide. We're going to skip through it. You guys know that. This is the Wild Belly logo. Does it look like anything you're familiar with? Do we have any snowboarders People that ski in here? No? Are you guys lying to me? I think you're lying to me. We're in Colorado. So this is supposed to look like a black diamond. It's inspired by the black diamond you may see on ski slopes. Black diamonds are the most dangerous or steep slope there is. Of course, there's a double black diamond, but we didn't go there. That's just crazy. We wanted to show intentional danger and wildness. When you're going down a black diamond, you're choosing to go down that and to embark on an adventure. And of course, we know we'll come out, well, some of us. I'm not going down a black diamond. Most of you guys will come out alive. We also knew that our target audience identified very closely with this mark. And then the typography we chose, we really wanted this brand to appear to be timeless. A lot of our competitors were using sans serif fonts. A sans serif is basically just a font without that little foot or the edge on it. So we're using a serif font for this brand. It has a slight nod to the 1970s as well, which was really important to create that timeless look. Color is also so very important when you're branding. You need to understand that color isn't the same across all cultures. So orange in India is a very sacred color, whereas in Zambia, it's not even considered a color at all. For Wild Belly, we chose Dutch orange and avocado green. The orange is creating a sense of urgency and danger while also being a color of amusement in North America. And the green is a symbol for permittence and gives us a kind of calm, organic feeling. So I juxtapose these two colors together because we're saying two different things in this brand. Once you're done with that core part of your brand, your logo design, your color, and your imagery, you're going to think about touch points. So a touch point is any point of contact between a buyer and a seller. And remember, you're always communicating that brand strategy through your design. They're not separate. So a touch point for Wild Belly is this season pass we created. This season pass is actually just a loyalty card that offers different things, like 10% off at food trucks. You can get points for your drinks and all that. But it resembles a season pass you may see on a resort, which is a really fun touch point ski resort. Of course, the typical t-shirt with orange. Business cards are a touch point. And almost anything could be a touch point. It could be an event, it could be a speaking gig, it could be a poster. Anything you want could be a touch point. It just needs to communicate your brand strategy. And then of course the menu design with fun names for the cocktails. We have the Wild Belly, Done and Dusted, Wake Up Call, the Black Diamond, Fireside, Babe in Blue, and the Wild Old Fashioned. So even the names are tying back into that unique selling proposition and that brand. So I hope that was a good beginner's lesson on brand strategy and design and what you need to do to start to brand yourself. Brands are living and breathing things. They're never done. You never brand something and then leave it and it's done. It's constantly changing and evolving. Just look at the Coca-Cola logo over the years or the different ad campaigns that we see through Nike. There are always new things being done and we're always reminding the customer of our position in the marketplace. So you guys can reach me if you want to chat about any of this or have more questions after tonight at badbitchbranding.com or Haley at badbitchbranding.com. And then of course, romeobranding.com. And then on Instagram, I am Blessed Are the Bad. So like I said, I'm rebranding in September and you guys kind of saw, this is the new imagery that's not fully out yet. So you guys got a sneak peek. But after September, I will be at HaleyJordan.com. So I kind of wanted to open up some questions if you guys have any. Does anyone have a question or just want to talk about a brand they're working on, a concern? I'll give you this.
No, that's fine.
Oh, can I hear you?
Your company actually does branding for companies from concept all the way to market?
Yeah, so both of them do actually. Yeah, someone will come to me and they'll say, I have this idea or I want to do this thing. And oftentimes, like with Wild Belly, my client came to me and he said, I want to create something called the City Mountain Lodge. And I said very nicely, are you sure you want to call it that? Because that's not very compelling. So he came to me without anything and we started to build that story, build that brand name, called it Wild Belly, which I think all of us would agree is more compelling and fun than a brand story. And if you guys didn't hear his question, it was just, do I work with brands from the start? Sometimes it's just an idea. Sometimes they don't even have a space. A lot of my restaurant clients don't even have their space yet, which is kind of funny, because then we're waiting for him to get his space, and that takes a while here in Denver. Does that answer your question? Anyone else? Yes.
Can you talk about your transition from your corporate job to, I guess, what you're doing now?
Sure, like how it went, what I did, how did I get there?
Mildly off topic, but I'm curious.
No, that's fine. I love talking about it actually because I'm rebranding a little bit myself, like I said, from Bad Bitch Branding to Haley Jordan, to help people just like that are feeling stuck at their job. I mean, I really felt that my life was being wasted, which sounds dramatic, but that's truly how I felt. And I know a lot of other people feel that way when they're sitting at their desk for 8 hours, when they're missing out on things. I had to work on Christmas Day like for a few years, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. So by transition, I basically started Bad Bitch Branding a year before I left and worked on it on the side. I would go to meetings. I worked actually not 9 to 5, I worked 2 to 10 p.m. Same hours, but I was in TV, so I was working late. And I would sometimes go to 3 meetings before I had to go into work. So there was a lot of hustling at the beginning to get it all going. Once I was making the minimum that I could each month and to survive off of, to basically make up for my full-time job, I quit my job and just went for it. Does that kind of, do you have a specific question related to that?
No, that's good.
Yeah, I had to get out of there. Who else wants to get out of there? I know you guys do. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you think it's more important to understand your audience before creating your USP, or do you think it's better to do it the other direction?
I actually think that it all goes together. So I gave you an order, but I think that they should be happening together. Once you look at your audience, you'll be able to say like, oh, this is a gap in the marketplace, that this audience needs something. So I think doing it together, it's just hard to tell you guys the steps if I say do it all together. So I think, researching them both at the same time, they're both so important. Because if you don't have an audience for something, there's no point in creating a USP for it, you know?
So before you started doing your branding, did you build an audience, or did you start the company and then build an audience?
You mean like, did I have people following me on Instagram and whatnot?
Did you have people requesting your services, or was it like you start
No.
a business and then get clients?
Yeah, so I was at my corporate full-time job, and every now and then I'd get people saying like, oh, hey, you do logo designs. Will you design this logo for me? Mostly friends and people that knew me, and I was like, sure, I'll do it. But when I really started having a voice for what I was doing was after I created the brand, because then people could put a name to it. And Bad Bitch Branding, even though I don't like it as much today as I did back then, it's still very powerful and people remember it instantly. And so that kind of brought more people to me and built my audience. But it's not a quick thing, and I'm still building my audience. It just takes a while. But I would definitely say get that brand story and that USP, because that is what drives people to you and makes them resonate with you and want to work with you. So yeah, I just had random clients in passing, pretty much. Anyone else? Yes. Oh, go you first.
I actually have 2 businesses. One, I've actually just redone my website. I'm a hairdresser. I specialize in hair extensions. And then I just graduated from an equine therapy. So I got a lot of work to do. But I have websites for both. I have beautiful logos. I have everything. I'm kind of stuck with adding things to the website because I don't have a lot of WordPress experience. I used to be really good at it. So kind of getting that to market, and then going back to what you said, and kind of that manifesto kind of concept, making sure it's got a little bit of that on my websites, but it's not like,
Yeah.
it's not down in there. So the time it takes and to do all this stuff is kind of where I'm stuck, to get it to market, make money.
Yes. Yes. So she's talking about how it's actually very time consuming to do all of this and to create that manifesto that's really powerful and that brand story. Honestly, I've had clients come to me and I've created a brand story for them, and they've told me it's a little bit too dramatic and they'd rather it be a little bit more basic. So it's whatever you want as well. I think dramatic is better, not necessarily dramatic, but something really powerful and bringing in, humanity into the story. But you're right, it takes a long time, and I'm rebranding myself right now, and I have other work to do too, and so I understand it's just very time consuming.
So like in that equine thing that I want to get started, I kind of want to market to hair salons because the background is kind of really crazy. So I kind of want to do like team building and things like So are you saying you gotta like start hoofing it and going out to salons and marketing yourself? And I mean, what are those cards? Those infograms or something like that? They're like cards that you can hand out. Or,
Like a brochure.
the brochures kind of gone
Yeah.
by the wayside, or some other kind of play card
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing that you could leave places besides just a business card. It's a lot, you know?
Yeah, so handing out touch points and becoming visible is very important, and it's annoying for a lot of us. We're like, do I have to sell myself? I don't want to sell myself. I want people just to buy me.
But yeah, getting the newsletters out, I'm kind of really stuck.
Yeah.
You know?
It's definitely a massive job, and if you're working with anyone that's like, oh yeah, branding, that's fine, it's fun, I do it on the side, la la la. It's like, I don't know if you know what it is, because it's a big job. So yeah, definitely. Getting out there and becoming visible, positioning yourself to the right people is important too. You're not just throwing it out, you're going, like, you have a strategy for every move that you make, even down to the colors that are on that brochure and the way that you're telling that story.
Yeah, it's pretty streamlined. The hair sites, like, kill it. Awesome.
Well, good luck. I know how it is. Do you still have your question? Did you forget it?
The manifesto example you showed, you highlighted the fact that you didn't mention their products, beer and pizza. And I've had that conversation with clients where they say, well, this manifesto doesn't even say what we do or what we sell. So what do you speak to that? Because I know it's an emotional component as opposed to getting people tied down to a product or a service. I know why you do it, but how do you go
Tell
about
your client, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, sometimes you can tell them what's best and they don't want what's best. And then you say, okay, you want it yellow? It's yellow. But I think that just explaining to them and showing them bigger brand examples, like when we looked at that long story of the goddess for Nike, they didn't really talk about buying shoes at all. And I mean, the most successful thing is probably just to show them big brands that are doing this and explain to them that's how it works. And if by the end your client wants something that you disagree with and that's a bad choice, you have to just do it for them. I mean, that's what they're paying us for, I guess. Does that help? Yeah. Anyone else? No one else? Are you sure? All right. Oh, got one more.
Can you talk about the mediums that you would choose to communicate your brand story, which might be most effective?
Mediums as in social media or website?
Web, email marketing, advertising.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your brand is. So for Haley Jordan, that's more of a personal brand now. So I will be using email marketing and Instagram a lot more. But it depends on what you're selling and it depends on your target audience. Maybe if you're targeting a younger demographic, you might use Snapchat or something like that. So I think it just all depends. But of course, your brand story and all of that should be on your website and should be on your social media. But yeah, it just depends on who you're targeting, where they are at. Anyone else? All right, thank you guys so much. If you want to come talk to me and ask questions, I'm over here.